Hi, everyone. Welcome to Clutch Entertainment today, our podcast, 15-minute podcast, where today we'll be talking about communication, like several ways that we can communicate effectively, several ways that you can listen, several ways that you can be civil with someone, and then also there's several ways that you can communicate with people that I will tell you the order which you probably should. There's like different levels of communication that we all go through each and every day. So we all have to figure this out together here today on the podcast. But I'll have some tips and tricks here. I'd like to start off while talking about types of communication. So first we have letter and mail, like if you mail something. Then we have email. That would probably be the second lowest. And then we have text message, and then calling, and then video calling, and then active listening. So there's a total of 6 ways of communicating with somebody in today's society there. And if we're trying to communicate with any of these different ways, there's a time and a place for each one. So if you're trying to do a letter, I would say it's something to do with like maybe a business needs it, something that maybe like you're writing to a pen pal, or maybe something else is occurring with like a bill or something like that. That would be more of what you do with like a letter. An email would be more of like a introduction, a friendship, a acquaintance, someone who you're trying to start a conversation with and trying to ask for something. Typically, sometimes people use orders for it. Sometimes people use it for, like I said before, with letters, like businesses. They require signatures, like on email, e-signatures. There's several, and there's the way of sending pictures and all kinds of other attachments on email. So that's a different thing that you could use email for. But I would rank that the second lowest, just because it's on the communication scale. It's not very personal. The next one I would talk about is text messaging. Text messaging is more of a way to first start communicating with someone. So someone that wants to feel comfortable, like someone you just meet, like maybe it's a girl or relationship or a guy, or maybe it's someone that you just said, hey, let's be friends, or I need to do a business model with you or something like that. Typically when you do that, you get the text messages and you just start off communicating that way, and then it's transitioned to phone calls. Phone calls are very personal. I would rank them as almost as high as video calls, because video calls you could see their face. So phone calls are the next one, and when you take a phone call or you make a phone call, it's usually you want to get something immediately, or you want to focus on a specific subject when you call someone. So some people just call to see how somebody's doing, because they can hear that emotion and that feeling, where you can't hear that over a text or email or letter. You can feel it and you can hear it, because your senses are different with those two things. Like sight is one thing, but hearing is another. So when you hear something, our emotions gravitate more towards the situation. For example, this is kind of unrelated, but for example, a cat, they use their pitch to get what they want. If say they want to get some food, they'll start meowing really loud. And if they meow really loud, they actually do that to mimic a baby's cry, because they know evolutionary wise that we will respond to a baby's cry. So that's one reason why they do that. So phone calls are more of used for, like I said before, to get something that you want to do. Or if it's for a relationship, you call someone because you want to ask them on a date. I feel personally when you try to do things over text messages, it's more of like a casual thing, like I'll be there in a second, or we'll do this soon, or something like that. But a call should be more of, I mean this and I want to tell you this. If you're doing a relationship and you want to break something off, never do it over a text message. If you want to do something like a business deal, never do it over a text message either. It's a lot more personal, and it's a lot more important to do something over a phone call. The next one higher than that is a video call. Now, I would say this is probably the one before meeting somebody. So if you're trying to, trying to meet somebody in person, but you can't meet them yet, I would use the video call, just because you can see the person and you can hear the person. So those two senses combined give you an overall feel for the person a lot more rather than a lot less of feeling how this person is, what they do, what their plans are. Those two things are very important. And then when you're in person is the best way to communicate. You can see, feel, hear. It's all your senses when you're around the person. So when you're around the person, you can basically communicate however you want, and however you can communicate what you're trying to do, what your purpose is, what your intentions are. And with all those different senses, when you're in person, it's the best way to communicate to anybody. Now I'm going to talk about effectiveness. Effectiveness in communication is how you get your point across. There's two ways with effectiveness. There's body language and there's your tone of voice. So when you're using your body language, if you're moving your hands like this, you're trying to express something. If you're just having your arms crossed like this, you're showing that I'm closed off from the communication. Or if you're talking with eye contact, like when you're facing a camera, or if you're facing someone else, you want to look them right in the eyes so you can see how they're going to react or their emotion when you're communicating. And that would be the most important thing with the body language. And your tone of voice. So in your tone of voice, if you talk really loud, like ah, or if you talk really low, like ooh, those two different things cause you to convey something. So if I'm speaking to you and I'm upset about something, I'm going to raise my voice. If I'm not upset about something and I'm just normal, I'm just going to talk like I am now. So you got to think about when you're communicating with someone, or if you're about to approach a conversation, or even with body language, before you even start speaking, you got to think about how you're going to convey your message, how you're going to present yourself, and how you're going to like when I say present yourself, I mean more of like body language and speaking at the same time. So when you're about to approach somebody, for example, say I'm approaching my brother and I want to speak to him about something specifically, I want to make sure I think about how I'm going to be posture-wise with him, with my body language, and how I'm going to use my tone of voice to convey my message. Because if you give someone a false tone, so if I'm talking like this and bored, and I'm talking like this, no one's going to take you seriously. But if you're talking like, I hate you, you're a big jerk, no one's going to want to take you seriously either. So you really have to balance out how you speak, what you're doing, and what you're trying to get across. So that would be effectiveness in general. The next way of communication I'm going to talk about is mannerly and civility. So when you're talking to somebody, you want to be more approachable, or if you want to be, like I was talking about before with the tone of your voice, your tone with your voice can also show what you're trying to effectively help somebody, or how you're trying to be polite with someone. You want to approach all conversations and communications, and physically or body language wise, that you want to convey that as something good. When you communicate on the same level as someone, you're talking to them and you're giving them feedback for yourself, and they're giving you feedback. So it's a two-way street when you do that. So you not want to downplay somebody, but at the same time, you want to get your point across politely. The best thing to do is not necessarily to go up to them and just yell, because instantly somebody gets a defense wall. We all have defense walls, and our defense walls protect us from feeling somebody over us. We're all the same level of people, but we don't want to be over someone else, because we're all different people. We all have strengths and weaknesses, but we should approach each conversation or communication as if we're the same level. The only difference I would say that is if you're speaking to someone younger than you, or you're speaking to someone who's like a lot less experienced. That would be the only situation where you not like necessarily talk down to them, but you'll talk in a more understanding tone. If you're working out, for example, and someone is helping you train, it's better for them to teach you not by berating you or saying you're terrible or you're weak. It's better to encourage someone, say, okay, I want you to try this. Not say, do this and, I want you to do this no matter what. It's better to push more of, come on, you can do it. You got this, in a more positive tone and message. So being civil and mannerly with someone is the way to communicate the best way. Lastly, I'm going to talk about the most important thing, which is called active listening. So when you're speaking to someone, you always want to not always think about what you're going to say next, but what they are saying to you. Because what they are saying to you is a lot different than just not listening and saying your next piece. It's good to have something to say the next couple seconds they respond to you, but it's good to let the other person talk. The more the other person talks, the more effective that you can get your conversation across when you listen the right way. So if I'm listening to, say, a podcast, for example, it's all listening. There's no feedback. So when I'm listening to a podcast or something like this, I'm listening to everything they say. I can't directly respond, but I'm still able to take in everything. And that's the kind of level that we need to have. We need to have that level of taking everything in. And when we take everything in, we can analyze it. And then straight after that, we can respond appropriately. So responding appropriately is the best way when you're listening actively, to have them talk to you and, like I said, not necessarily think about what you're going to say and just like get it all in your head. And the best way to approach it is to listen first, respond second. That would be my best way to do it, because you're looking at what they are trying to get their point across, or how you're going to get your point across, but you want to do it in a mannerly civility way. So today I spoke about communication in general, how to be effective, how to be civil and mannerly, how to be an active listener, and all the different types: letters, emails, text messages, calls, video calls, and in person. Each, like I said before, each has a time and place for each way, and you always want to be gesturally appropriate for each situation, like I was saying before with the body language. And you want to always have a good tone when you speak to someone. You want to speak in a direct tone and situational tone. So being angry is okay, but don't overboard it. It's okay to be upset in a conversation, but make sure you do it appropriately. And make sure you're listening to somebody appropriately. When you're talking, you always want to let them get their point across and listen effectively. So in doing all these things, it'll help you be a more effective communicator, listener, and you'll actually be a better speaker than, maybe your average person next to you. So I just wanted to pass these communication tips. I actually majored in communication and PR in college, and I love to communicate with people. Hopefully you have a great rest of your day, and if you can like and subscribe, the notification bell below, and And we'll have our next weekly podcast next week. So thank you very much and have a great rest of your day. Thanks.